Global Ethics Theory and the Politics of Knowing is a 2012 book by Ngugi wa Thiong'o. We can say that the book starts with a statement from Goethe, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, or Goethe as we call him in English. Goethe in 1827 had remarked that national literature is now a rather unmeaning term. The epoch of world literature is at hand. So, as early as 1827, Goethe could foresee that the days of national literature were gone. Now we must think about literature globally, which gave rise to not only the concept of world literature but also the so called comparative literature. The statement by Goethe. In India, Rabindranath Tagore was very much influenced, like Goge, by this idea of Goethe, and he wrote an article in Bangla named Bishwa Sahitya, which is literally a translation of Goethe's world literature. However, Gugi goes beyond Goethe because by the time he was writing this, or he is writing this, we are in a post-colonial world, whether you mean it with a hyphen or without a hyphen. So, he finds, if I may summarize it in this way, that the kind of world literature that is practiced in the world or in the globe or in the comparative literature departments, for example, around the globe, is basically Eurocentric. There is a hierarchy. Generally, when we talk about world literature or comparative literature, what do we have in mind? Let's ask ourselves. Do we think about Tamil, Manipuri, or Punjabi literature? Generally, no. The ideas that come before our mind, the authors that come before our mind, are from the ancient Greece, Rome, Italy, or contemporary, France, Germany, England, or contemporary Italy, all those kinds of so-called great metropolitan centers. That is our idea of basically world literature. So the world is European in a way. So that has to be deconstructed, rather destroyed in a way, not deconstructed. So we can say that this is a logical culmination of Gugi's essay, earlier essay, 1967 essay on the abolition of the English department. So this is important for both the semesters, second sem and fourth sem. Now in that essay, he spoke about a kind of Afrocentrism against Eurocentrism in Kenya, and while teaching it in my class, I had said that Gugi is basically like and not like Said, because Said in his Orientalism has said that though he is speaking against Eurocentrism, he doesn't mean to say that we can replace Eurocentrism with a kind of Afrocentrism or Asiacentrism, etc. There is no center. 1978, Said was saying that. But before that, and for quite some time after that, Gugi was very much interested in making Africa the center, or by logical extension we may say Asia the center. Now, in this book, Global Ethics, he has become more liberal. Actually, the anti-colonial edge, anti-colonial sharpness that was there is still there, but the sharpness is kind of mediated by, or we can say mellowed down by the consciousness of, or greater awareness of many other literatures beyond Africa. And of course, in that book also, that essay also, Evolution of the English Department, he had spoken about Asian roots, Chinese roots, this and that. Anyway, but in Global Ethics, he makes it clear that it is a kind of protest against two things, this globalistic mode of reading. First is it is anti-national, we can say, not referring to any particular nation. It is risky. That is, it is reading literature not as limited to or property of a particular nation. So in this, more or less is close to the liberal humanists. Secondly, this non-hierarchical way of reading. He has elaborated on it further in the book, that whenever we read literature or global literature, there is a kind of hierarchy which we just spoke about. At the top, there are classical literatures in a way, that too European classical literatures, and then European literatures. Then you go down the scale, maybe Asian, Middle Eastern, and at the end maybe African literature. That kind of a hierarchy is there. That has to be done away with. He also takes note of Gayatri Spivak's wonderful book, which I have read, which all of you should read at some point of time, The Death of a Discipline, where Spivak's single most important argument is that the comparative literature will die because, or has died because, it has focused only in comparing between European literatures, which in many cases is not comparison, no comparison at all, because they are all related, Germanic or that thing. So if comparative literature was to survive, it must include literatures written in the non-European world. The same thing Googie is saying in different words. So if to just clarify further, I'd like to read a little from the book. Globalactics, Googie says, derived from the shape of the globe, is the mutual containment of here-ness and there-ness in time and space, where time and space are also in each other. It is the Blackian vision of a world in a grain of sand and eternity in an hour. He elaborates further, reading globalactically is a way of approaching any text from whatever time and places to allow its content and themes form a free conversation with other texts of one's time and place, the better to make it yield its maximum to the human. So I will elaborate. Generally, for example, the kind of protocols that we set for reading texts is basically chronological and even spatial. Chronological, for instance, we often say that if you want to get the full meaning of Iliad fully, or so you can say Ramayana also, you have to go back to that time. If possible, understand Sanskrit and Greek, read it in the original Sanskrit or Greek, and then you have to imagine the different place also. So Bakhtinian chronot of time, place, etc. In our protocols of reading, we insist on that. Otherwise, this is no scholarly reading or no proper reading. Or Shakespeare's plays, we say you must be aware of the Renaissance, you must be aware of the Elizabethan worldview. E.M.W. Tillier's book was compulsory in our time. So A.O. Lovejoy, The Great Chain of Being, all these things. So time and place provided the context for any proper reading. Googie does away with that. That these are not necessary. You can read any text from your point of view here and now. Obviously, side observation, translation is a very important tool here. We do not know all the languages of all the places and all the time. So naturally, when he says that we can read any text from the present point of view here and now, obviously in most cases this will be through translation. He also takes note of that. There lies the primacy of translation. But so this kind of a reading, what it will do is, it will yield maximum to the human, according to Googie. Now my observation here, kindly note, this is not new, what Googie is saying. There are two things to it. First of all, the liberal humanist tradition, and secondly, that disinterested pursuit to know and propagate whatever is best known and thought in the world, the Arnoldian maxim. Googie only says that in other words, and with the awareness of colonial literature or post-colonial literature, because Arnold's best known and thought was limited to Europe. Best known and thought in the world, we may just conclude best known and thought in Europe or the West, so far as Arnold is concerned. But Googie's world is the real world. And secondly, there is a tremendous importance given in on post-colonial literatures. He uses the term again and again while being fully aware of the problematics of the term post-colonial itself, but it is useful as a category of description. So he says again from the text, I quote, this is very crucial: the post-colonial is not simply located in the third world, literally rooted in the intertextuality of products from all corners of the globe. Its universalist tendency is inherent in its very relationship to historical colonialism and its globe for a theatre. That is, though post-colonial writers in general and critics in particular talk about post-colonial texts being historically rooted in their times and places, because they were products of a network of relationships which is colonialism, by that very fact they are also universal, or more universal that we know and that we can imagine, more universal that we can think about. So that is, reading globalactically or globalactically approaching a text is reading it first of all not so much as a product of a particular time or place in history, but almost as a contemporary, almost like the neo-critics did. And second point is, you have to read non-hierarchically. Both spatial hierarchy and temporal hierarchy actually are to be ignored, so that we can bring maximum for the good of humanity. So you can see, again going back to my original point, this is basically an elaboration and expansion of his arguments on the abolition of the English department. Then thank you very much.